Well, good morning, weirdos. Happy Sunday morning. It's about time we get back on live radio here. Radio, such as it is more podcast. It's a live podcast on Sunday morning because we're not broadcasting on the radio. That's why we don't have the 3-minute buffer at the beginning. So welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. It's been a long week, and we didn't do any shows this week other than some updates on Uncle Dave. And so I appreciate everybody coming in. Grumpy Stack, good to see you, brother. And Matthew Sainsbury, glad to see you're here. Saunders is here. Roger Rabbit, good morning. Say hey to that lovely little wife of yours and child. And Josh Kemp is here. And Carlene Smith, good to see you all. And there's probably some other people here I'm not seeing yet. But everybody, welcome to the program. Oh, there is Russ. Good to see you, Russ. He says, good day. And Sarah Yusuf is here. Nice to see you this morning. And so I'm glad y'all made it in. And it's good to be here. It's hot and sunny out. It's bright. The sun is really bright this last week. Over bright, over hot. And so it's already hot and a little humid outside, which I don't like humid. Everin, good to see you, brother. And what's everybody saying? Josh sent me rain. Josh, send me rain right now. Meow, he says. So he's trying. So cheers, everybody. I hope you've got your coffee. I've got mine in my Subspace Radio mug. Hey, Philip Blair, good to see you. Love and prayers for Uncle Dave Potter. Thank you very much, everybody. Randall Flagg just popped into the room. Good to see you, brother. And I would show you some of the gorgeous sunshine, but I am, of course, down here in too many people use, and it's become cliche to call this the bunker. It's my basement. It's my semi-finished, well, pretty finished. Just need some walls and sheetrocking on the walls, things like that. And we've got rooms down here, master bedroom behind me, the studio here, the big family room and Rainey's studios over on that side. So it's just fine down here, except there's no sunlight. It'd be nice to have a window that would bring in the sunlight on Sunday morning. Sarah Yusuf, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, the cave. There it is. Yeah, that's pretty much what we got here. And so I'm glad that you're all here. Thank you for all the messages you've been pouring out over this last week about Uncle Dave. It was a sudden surprise, an unexpected turn of events last weekend is an understatement. And when we were doing this show last Sunday morning was when I got the word that he was in the hospital and not expected to pull through. And that's why we left the show early last week. Rainey is I hope planning on coming down and making an appearance this morning. I told her, you know what? Pretty soon I'm going to call this Sunday Morning Coffee with Scotty and everyone else because she doesn't make it in ever. She's got so much going on, but she's just sitting out in her pajamas in the backyard where I left her. And I'm still in my pajamas, frankly. I'm wearing shorts and this. And too lazy to go get dressed this morning. So, but you wouldn't know the difference if I didn't tell you. So I just got an announcement that said I need to be ready to start my live radio show at 9 o'clock. Thanks for that, Google. It's now 9:05. So, Josh Kemp, we need rain up here in a big, bad way. Up here in Wisconsin, Minnesota, we got record snowfall. Now, maybe you can explain a bit how this works. I thought I'd heard that the amount of snow you get up here in the north goes into the ground and it waters everything. You're supposed to have a good season because you've gotten so much water. We got a record amount of snow with something like I'm just guessing at remembering 105 to 110 inches of snow over the winter. And so you thought we're set up pretty well. Everything was really green all through May and part of June. Well, it's more April and part of May. May was really green. It was just lush. You drive around the countryside here, you look like you were in Ireland. And but now everything, my whole front yard is brown and crunchy. So the sun has cascaded more than any water that's that could be used around here. We need a big thunderstorm and a few days of rain up here would be awfully nice. And it's still green out there, but it's brown. Hey, Helene Moody. Very pleasant 22 Celsius here in London to a lovely breeze. What are we right now? Let me find out. Hey, Google, what's the current temperature? Well, it's 72 degrees, and it's going to be sun all day. So not a cloud in the sky. So there you go. Now, Roger Rabbit says, so lush this spring, and now it's all dead. It's like almost like dry desert out there. Only green left on the golf courses around here are the greens themselves. Says Roger. That's down just a little south of here. Maybe 6-7 hours south of here. Down in Illinois. And 6 hours maybe. Chief Romeldian, good to see you. Welcome to the program this morning. And everybody who's trickling in, it's good to see you. Reuben FastHorse is going to be here this morning. I just talked to him about a half an hour ago. So he'll be coming in pretty soon. And we'll bring him in. But since it is technically the 4th of July weekend, how many of you have to go to work tomorrow? You have Monday off, so you can do the whole 4-day weekend. Is your company benevolent enough and magnanimous enough to give you Monday off of work so you can enjoy a 4-day weekend? Or are they celebrating that it's on a Tuesday, and so they don't have 3 days where they have nobody working? Grumpy Stack says, I work every day. That's right. He'll change your tire and give you a new set of tires any day of the week. Yeah, I kind of work all the time too. I was up last night, Saturday night, working on a client's website. And because I was in the mood, I came down because I was ready to go to bed. I just sauntered over into the office to shut things down, saw the stuff I was working on still on the screen, and I sat down and I was up for another 2 hours working on stuff. So Grumpy Stack is a slave laborer and he's a slave master. So how do you figure that one? Susie Q, good to see you this morning. Nice to have you here. And so, as is my tradition, even though I've done it at times that weren't 4th of July, I like to read. This is Independence Day. And I like to read through the Declaration of Independence and get your feedback as we're reading it. It's a short document. It takes about 10 minutes to read. So I'm going to read that as is our tradition for this weekend of the year. And you all give me your feedback. Because remember, it's not just a 4th of July isn't just a holiday for cooking hot dogs and making s'mores over the open fire and swimming and boating and all the outdoor stuff and having a day off work. It's to celebrate, and of course, fireworks. It's to celebrate why we exist as a nation. And, oh, by the way, did you know, I don't know what the official name is. I think they were doing kind of a play on Gay Pride Month. They're saying this is American Pride Month, America Pride Month. And are you proud to be an American? Is this your country? I just saw, I have to refresh my memory on when he did this. It was Mark Robinson. He's the lieutenant governor of North Carolina. He gave a speech And he said, I am not African American. He's a big black man. And he says, I am not African American. He says, I was not born in Africa. He says, I have never flown the African flag over my home or in service. He says, I am an American. I was born here. And I'm going to play this reel through so I can see what I'm no African American, he says. I'm not African American. Yeah, I said, I ain't no African American. And when we were fighting for our freedom in the Civil War, we weren't flying no African banners. We were flying the Star-Spangled Banner. I've never pledged allegiance to any nation in Africa, nor do I intend to. I'm an American. My story is American. I am American. My blood is American. My mind is American. My heart is American because I'm an American. And that's what he had to say. And that came out on Facebook. I saw it and I shared it. Facebook had to put up, or Meta, which is Facebook, put up a trigger warning, by the way. So you have to have a trigger warning now for somebody who declares that they are American, and especially a black man who declares that he is not African American, he is American American. So there you go. Philip Blair says, I signed my copy of the Declaration of Independence. My ancestor's first cousin was a signer. That's outstanding. That's very cool. Well, here is the text of the Declaration of Independence. This is something I have done every 4th of July for several years. And so listen to this. If you don't know what it says, even if you do know what it says, here it is. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, and people can quibble about the date. That's the date they officially put on the document. It says this: the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and by the way, let me make a commentary on that. Yeah, that's what they meant in the verbiage of the day. And there was abolition going on for slavery in this country that started in the 1830s, even before England had done it. Many of the colonies were already doing that. And all men were created equal. They didn't include women in that. That was the times that things were done. And it wasn't stated that way, but it really means all people are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You notice it doesn't say, and the guarantee of happiness. It guarantees the pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization in foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He's erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment by any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with the circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or all to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, it says here. Yeah, you have to pardon that. Reuben could comment on that. Whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We've reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We've appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for a rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things, which were capitalized, acts and things, which independent states may have a right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And then it was signed, all the signees that were representatives of the different colonies. So there, folks, is the Declaration of Independence. That is the document and the act that here in the United States of America we celebrate on a day like today. And this day in particular. So you get the idea of what we're about. If you live here, for Meta to put up a trigger warning on 4th of July weekend for an American who declares he is an American, shows you the stance of places like Meta. Companies like Meta, Facebook, and so on that enjoy the benefits of having the freedom of being a citizen of the United States, citizens of the United States, constitutionally protected rights that they believe are now, because we've done bad things in our history, we are no longer a good nation, or that we now must kowtow to every political woke whim that is out there, and issue trigger warnings for a people who are, for an American people, because we are talking about being American. And as I mentioned earlier, this is supposed to be now America Pride Month. Put your flags on your Facebook page. Show that you are America proud. This is American Pride Month. So have at it, folks. Do it. So let's see. What are we saying over here in the chat room? Matthew's given us history lessons. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. Thomas Jefferson was the principal officer and a slave owner himself. That's right. And remember, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, this was not formed to be an anti-slave colony or country. That was the mode of the day. It was those same founders that founded this nation, who owned slaves, who had to come to grips themselves with the fact that slavery is abhorrent. And it took us fourscore and what was Abraham Lincoln? Why am I forgetting the number? 7 years ago. So it took 87 years for that to really catch on in such a big way that we were in the midst of a civil war that was primarily, but not only, and sure, it was about economics. But Lincoln turned a corner with the economics and became a very fervent in his desire to abolish slavery in this country. So it took our young country that came out of a world that was primarily operating under the paradigm of every country had slaves to say we have to go along with our British brothers and sisters, as well as our abolitionists who began before Britain even declared that there was to be that before they abolished slavery. They said it's time. We have to do this. Even Jefferson wrote about it himself. He had slaves, and he couldn't undo overnight what he had done. And I think he was probably just fine with his having slaves. Washington, the same thing. He would have ruined them all financially because of the way the system was built in a world that was built on owning slaves. We were not the only country. We like to come back like the United States owned slaves. Well, everybody owns slaves. Every single country on the planet owned slaves. And there's still some today that do. But we abolished slavery, and that is the fact of this country. So, and even Jefferson, I was saying, wrote that the slavery question is something that is a great burden on my mind, how to deal with this, how we have to get rid of it. And he didn't just come out and say, we've got to abolish this. He had to work himself into that because of the paradigm of the day, the mindset of the day. This is the way it was. And people go, oh, you can't use it. Yeah, you can. Because there is such a thing called history. There's such a thing as historical paradigms. That was one of them. And all our slaves weren't all from Africa. That's right, Morgan. Huge Irish slavery. They talk about in excess of 400,000 Irish slaves in America. And the people that want to say it was only African slavery will poo-poo that and say, well, they were just indentured servants. It was a little more than that. You got to read your history. It's a history that gets buried for preference of one version of history. So Josh Kemp says, yeah, more slavery now than then. So there you go. Many were Native Americans, says Philip Blair. And the Native American issue for the second 100 years of this nation, well, the middle section, let's carve that out, was a big problem from the beginning, even till now. The court case is still going on. But until around the turn of the last century, the early 1900s, it was a big problem. The United States government and the people that were in power that were making those laws and pushing those military actions and pushing to take away the land of the Native Americans committed atrocity after atrocity after atrocity. But keep in mind, those were elected officials. Those were people who were in the offices. You've got basically a handful of people that were doing that in the United States because they had the power to do it. I saw a speech by Ronald Reagan again the other day. He says, remember, something that we tend to forget is that the government is something that we control as the people. He says, the government is the car. We are the drivers. It can only go as fast as we let it or as slow as we let it. And it can only go to destinations that we take it. And he said, so we've forgotten that. So we, the people, there were many, 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 many scores of thousands of people that were abolitionists before we abolished slavery. Scores of thousands upon thousands of people who were against the atrocities committed to the Native Americans and extended help that were against our government doing that. So here's what I want us to stop doing. We can talk about in the chat room or here all the things that were problems in our history. Let's focus on what we can do and what we're supposed to do. We bring up all these different scenarios and hypothetical scenarios and historical scenarios to say this is why we are such a bad people. Well, if we're so bad, then let's abolish this country and let's all join a new one or let China take over. Whatever you want to do. Otherwise, we stand for what we know is right. And that's what we work toward. Stop bellyaching about what we've done wrong. That would be like in a marriage. If my wife to me or me to my wife, all we ever did was point out all the negative things that we've done to each other in our marriage. All the negative ways we've acted. All the unjust things that were said and done. How long would that marriage last? You can talk about those things because they are real history. But what we need to focus on is how we rebuild American pride. We have divisiveness in this country because all we do is focus on the bad things that our country has done. We're human beings. We've done bad things. We are also a country that corrects its badness, the mistakes that it's made. And those are the things we need to focus on. So stop the caterwauling about this was done and that was done and that was. We know that. It's a part of history. What are we doing now? What are you doing? What is the talk that you're going to put into this chat room today that tells why we are a good nation? What makes us a good nation? We are a good nation. We have made mistakes, but we are a good nation because of our freedom and our liberty in this nation. And the fact that we, the people, are the government. If the government does bad things, whose fault is it? It's the people who voted people into office. That's who. So there you go. That is our, I see Reuben has come into the room. I don't know how long. I notice you're behind my microphone and my line of vision here. Let me bring Reuben in. Good morning, Misu.
Oh, good morning. He honey washed everybody out there in StreamYard land.
Yes, StreamYard land.
And live from New York.
Live from New York, yes. We were just, I did my traditional, I don't know if you heard it or not, my traditional.
I heard part of it.
Reading of the Declaration, yeah.
I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting you brought that up because there is a lot of caterwauling, or whatever you said.
Caterwauling.
And it is up to our responsibility, up to us to want to be able to make change.
Yes.
As my father used to say, faith without works is dead.
Yes.
And that makes a lot of sense because I've been here 7 years now, Chia, as of July 7th. And today's my Susie's birthday. So
happy birthday, Susie.
So she was really instrumental for me in the sense of I'm 52 now. 52. And I can't believe it, 52.
I know.
But
try 62.
I know you were 10 years my better, so that's the name.
Just older.
Just old. But she was implemental in getting me to vote. And that may not sound strange to you, but for
I get it.
Or it was because Native Americans don't vote, and they should, but they can't invest in a government.
Native Americans should invest in voting for the elections in their country. It doesn't matter what the wishes and the dreams and the hopes of rebuilding the Native American nation might be that are out there, or showing protest because of what happened to the Native American peoples. Now that it's like you say to me so often, we might be on different ends of the political spectrum, but we love each other and we're brothers and we're living in the now. So what can we do in the now to affect our country? I would love to see Native American senators and members of the House. Could you imagine a Native American president? Now, of course, most presidents are, because we're all born here in that sense. An indigenous person.
It's great you're saying that, because to be honest, people don't know that 6 out of 10 Americans have Native American ancestry, and I use it in my lectures. So not all African Americans are totally black. They're
That's right.
Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw Creek, and Seminole in their family line.
Right.
And I can name 2 senators that have served. The earliest Native American senator was John Ross, R-O-S-S. He was Cherokee.
Scottish name.
Yeah, and he was half Cherokee. The other one is out of Wyoming. When I was in the 80s, when I was a teenager, I remember the name John Nighthorse. Daytime, nighttime, Nighthorse Campbell. And he was senator, and he was a black belt in judo, which is interesting, from the Marines. So there's just 2 that I can name, but I'm sure there are many others.
And I'm sure it's starting, but you're starting to see some of those names in history. I would love to see a Native American running for office for president of the United States. Only because, and now I say that, people go, well, what if he doesn't stand for what you believe in? I don't care. I would love to see a Native American, an indigenous person, running for the office. Whether I'd agree and vote for him or not is another thing. But I'd love to see that happening.
Yeah, and that's the nice progressive way of acknowledging all of us as Americans. I'd love to see one day maybe a black female LGBTQ person.
Right.
Hopefully we could graduate to that level. And it just comes to mind for me because I'm such a Trekkie fan, Star Trek, and you see all the different aliens working on the same boat, working for the same purpose. Male, female, black, white, green, yellow, Klingon, both.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. And Gene Roddenberry was great in bringing those things to light. That, hey,
I would never stand for a Klingon as the president of the United Federation of Planets. I can't go that far, Reuben.
There you go. Hopla, whatever they say.
Hopla.
Hopla. Yeah,
there it is.
That's great.
So,
but the Klingons coined a Native American, my tribe, Lakota, coined a phrase from us. It's a good day to die.
It's a good day to die. Yes. So Susie Keir says, if you were born in America, you're a Native American, period. I agree.
Amen.
Reuben and I have talked about that before. I am Native American. My family has been here for over 300 years, and I'm Native American. I'm not indigenous people Native American.
But you're
there's
right.
a difference. So
Susie's right in the sense, people often ask me, well, how long have the Native Americans been here? And the professors would say, university professors would say, well, according to carbon dating, about 12,000 years.
Right.
Which is true. But because there were 4 ice ages, and when I was born, on my lower spine was what you would call a Mongolian spot. Now, I'm not saying all Native Americans come from Mongolia, but I know my lineage has.
Yes.
Some, matter of fact, some tribes are already here per se. So there's that Mongolian spot. So we followed the animals across the Bering Strait when the ice age, the 4 ice ages, and that's how a lot of us came to be here. Now, I'm saying that to say this: if you ask an elder in the tribe, Native American, doesn't matter what tribe, they'll say, how long have your people been here? They'll say, well, our creation story says forever.
Yes.
We came from the stars, or we came from either the subworld of Native Americans, either we came from stars, the star people, Star Nation, or we came out of the ground, like in the Black Hills of South Dakota. They're all caverns and spelunkers and people that traveled in there and stuff. So there's those two things that come into play. But the reason being is time. Time is a man-made construct. Time. What time is it?
Right.
And so we had 13 moons as opposed to 12. We didn't follow a Gregorian calendar, which we don't anymore now, or a Mayan calendar. They had their own. So they had, if you see a buffalo hide or a deer hide, and you would see this swirl starts in the center and it goes around, and that swirl goes to the point where the swirl is not a line. It's hieroglyphs. Native American. We didn't have a written language, so we had these little pictures. What happened? I'd say to an elder, what happened 22 winters ago? So I'm really 52 winters. You're 62 winters, and that's how we gauged it.
It's a lot of snow.
Yeah, the winter solstice was our New Year, Native American New Year. But anyway, getting off the point. So 22 winters ago, we lost 3 children to snow blindness or a blizzard, and it's just a little picture of that.
Right.
So they remember, the historians, the elders. And then if you ask the same question to the same elder, what happened 2,222 years ago, they wouldn't know.
Right.
Again, time. They were not concerned about the past, the distant past. They were concerned about today and tomorrow. That's it. Yeah. So it would only go so far. So the professor's right. 12,000 years ago, we were here. We're indigenous still, like yourself. And so that makes a lot of sense, Susie. Very observant. Thank you for sharing that we're all Native American. If you're born in this country, and people say, well, are you American Indian or are you Native American? And I say I'm both. Indian comes from the Latin root word indios, which means in God, of God, or children of God, which is not a bad word. So I tell teachers in their high schools, elementary, and colleges, it's okay to say American Indian. You're not offending anybody. As opposed to, and it's right to say American Indian, because I was driving by and doing a show in Toledo, Ohio, a couple of years back, and come across a temple that said, come join us for service at the Indian American Temple. Indian for India.
Yes.
As Robert Williams used to say, the red dot in the middle of the forehead as opposed to the feather.
Dot. You used to tell me I'm Indian. Feather, no dot. So, John Potter, we're going to be talking a little bit about Uncle Dave. His brother just messaged me and said indigenous. He said, I'm very fond of indigenous peoples. And I think this is where many of us are. My fondness for indigenous peoples is something that led me to doing more study and more research. And I got to tell you, frankly, and I've talked about this before, but it's worth bringing up again. It was about 30 years ago that I first started really researching Native America and things I did not know. I remember growing up, cowboys and Indians, playing cowboys and Indians. You were always the bad guy if you were the Indian. And I don't want to be the Indian. I want to be the cowboy. And so we didn't know as much. And all the movies, the Westerns and so on, only very lightly hit on some of these issues. But it wasn't until, and I will say, my introduction to starting to research about Native America started with reading D. Brown's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And folks, I cannot recommend it more. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. It's by D. Brown, D-E-E. And it's a Native American perspective of the conquering of the American West. And it's I'm trying to think of the right word I would use to describe it. Bittersweet came to mind, but it's not really bittersweet. There are good stories in it. There's a lot of atrocity he's recounting how the American government took away and destroyed Native America. And it's not law, it was the idea of manifest destiny, that we were destined as the United States to own this continent from sea to shining sea. And there's a lot of good things on the flip side of that. We're a nation, we celebrate our nation from sea to shining sea. I mean, we all grew up with those songs. But the darker underbelly of that is what it took to get that. And what the belief system in place was that we have manifest destiny. And what was the eminent domain? We can come in and claim, Reuben, your land, because we want it. That's all we needed to do. And we had to fight for it. And sometimes because we had superior firepower, that's it ended up the way it did. I always had that sci-fi reimagining timeline. What if Native Americans had Uzis? And we'd be a very different country today. So
I'll say this in light of that, springboarding off that, we did have Uzis. We were quicker and faster with the bow and arrow and a tomahawk than they could load their muskets. The brown vests, and they fought. They taught a new style of fighting that we still use today in the armed forces: guerrilla warfare.
Yes. How many arrows do you suppose a good warrior could get off and hit its target in a minute?
Good six. Boom, 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 boom.
With a musket?
Maybe 12. Maybe 12 if it's a minute. Yeah. 30 seconds, I'd say 6. And
with a musket, which I have, and we've tried this, we've done experiments with it with the regiment, I could get off 3 shots in a minute.
Wow.
With a musket, with all the steps to loading a musket. Now, you had abbreviated ways you could do it. You just dump your powder and you dump your ball, you slam the butt on the ground and you fire. You don't ram it or anything like that.
Wow.
You don't, and so there are ways to speed it up. But 3 times a minute. Almost 4 on some occasions, depending on what I was doing. So, yeah, there was superior firepower. Hey, I see Matthew Sainsbury is hanging in the wings. Let's bring him in for a minute here. And how you doing, Matthew? From Barbados.
Hi, good morning, Scotty. Hi, Reuben. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. My deep condolences to you, Scotty. What happened to Dave.
Oh, thank you. His brother John is listening. John, you can come over into the chat room if you want to say hi to people, if you have time for that and can do that. Otherwise, John is listening. So his family.
Deepest condolences to John too. Yeah.
Yes, and some of you knew this and some of you didn't. I mentioned this on Rocky's show the other day when he had me on to talk about Uncle Dave, is that Dave's middle brother also died within the same couple of hours. So they lost 2 sons that day, and John lost 2 brothers. His parents lost 2 of their sons on the same afternoon. And so, but there's a little story John told. He says it's okay to talk about this, that his brother had sworn Dave to secrecy because he was not doing, I don't know exactly what his particular illness was, but he was in hospice care, meaning they're just helping him to die, and to die as peacefully as possible and comfortably as possible, waiting for death, so to speak. And he had sworn Dave to secrecy to, don't tell mom and dad about this quite yet. I don't think they could handle it right now, kind of thing, And he and Dave had kind of and John could maybe clear this up for me. My understanding is they had a kind of tongue-in-cheek brotherly pact, Stephen, I'm going to go before you, and a kind of thing. And jokingly and brotherly love. And so, as it so happens, his older brother, Stephen, the middle brother, passed away. And And he, as John said, he died and he had a smile on his face, peace and smile. And he says, I can only imagine, he was saying to Dave, because he had heard about the condition Dave was in, and was, hey, I beat you, brother. I'm still in front. I'm still made it ahead of you. And it's okay for you to come and join me now.
Yeah.
And
It's-
so, yeah.
No,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna go ahead and finish your.
That's all I was really
Oh,
going to say. And
thinking about Chia Dave, and so I call Scotty Chia Dave because they're older than I am.
right.
I say me soon, like Matthews, I think looks younger than me.
Yeah, much younger.
He'd be little
You're a
brother
kid.
Misu, and
Yeah.
yeah, he's a kid. And Scotty calls me Misu because I'm his 10 years younger. So
Little brother.
but these terms, these kinship terms that we utilize that make it more of an impact. And Dave definitely was an older brother of Chia. He paved the way in many ways.
Yeah.
From what I knew him, he was fearless. He was strong. But we all have our time. And when I said that earlier about the Klingons, it's a good day to die. It's not a
Right.
negative term.
No.
It means that you love life so much that you're willing to lay it down, whether
Yes.
it's for a friend or a brother or whatever it is, and that's the real connection. And it makes me think about, since we're talking about the passing over, that it's just a doorway for
Yes.
Lakota people. We see it as every time you get a chance to be in the night sky with no artificial light, look up and you'll see what you call
Stars?
the Milky Way. We
Yeah.
call it the ghost road, and that when you walk on it, it goes south. And this is through Native American perspective, naked eye astronomy. Naked eye, didn't have telescopes or anything. So they just studied the stars, and they come to realize that there's a fork in the road, and it goes off a short path, and then a longer into the beyond, nirvana, heaven, happy hunting ground, whatever you want to call it. We don't know. But the short road, at the crux of that fork sits an old woman, and she looks for your head for a tattoo or your hand for I don't know what tattoo, but for a sign. And she'll say, Matthew, were you a good man? And if you lie, she'll know. And she'll say, take the path to your right, which is the small road. And then you come off the road and you be reincarnated back into another being. So another chance. But if she says, Matthew, were you a good man? And you said, I tried my best. And then she say, take the road to your left, and you'd go into the nirvana, heaven, or whatever you want to call it in that sense. So I think about Dave on that ghost road, the Milky Way, which is.
Hell, I know what loss is like. I know what loss is like, because it's not only my father that passed, but when I was younger, I lost my mom as well too. So I know how it is.
So those are the things that affect us, and we've all lost somebody. This was very deep for me, for most of us. I have spent most of the week, as many of you know, and it seems so much longer than that, but it's been the whole week has been spent trying to think of how I would describe the way I have been. I can be talkative when I need to be, but all week long, and you all know me, I have no problem discoursing, no problem joking around, no problem talking. But this week it was that whole feel of not something Dave would want me to experience, but something I did experience, was that inability to really care about talking that much to people other than the people I needed to talk with. Talked with John a lot. I talked with Dana. I talked with other friends of ours. My wife would talk to me on some days, and I was like, just not responsive. I'm just like, please don't ask me any questions. Don't about groceries, about this or that. I'm along for the ride. and I just had nothing. I had nothing to give. And when it came to doing radio, there was nothing there. Putting out conversation was very difficult, and so I spent the week that way. And Dana had told me, and those of you who don't remember Dana, I've mentioned her, good friend of Dave's for longer than I have been, another fellow Ren Festi, also a spiritual confidant to Dave, spiritual healer, intuitive, also his business partner in several business ventures they had put together. And she told me, she says, you grieve in the way you need to grieve. She said, if it's not talking to people, you just go with it. And I've never been a non-talkative person.
What?
What?
Yeah, I know.
So. And and this week was just, I just didn't want to talk. I talked when I had to. I had a ton of people all week long, day in and day out, people calling me, texting me, and no problem with that at all. I was just battling the fact that, I don't want to talk anymore. And so it affected me to a really deep degree. And I'm coming out of it, but I knock on wood when I say that, because I thought I was coming out of it on Wednesday. Okay, I'm better today. And then my daughters and I talked on the phone, and they were upset, and they were still grieving. And of course, it was so fresh on Wednesday, and we all sat and cried on video conference for an hour, and laughed and cried. And there's not a one of us that grieves for Dave. We all grieve for the loss of Dave, and we all grieve for my daughter said I think it was my daughter who said there's a big hole left that Dave filled, and I said, yeah, but that's his footprint. So which is very true about him.
So the grieving process, as you're saying, it is heartfelt. Of course, we all grieve in our own way, as we should. What calls us, and the as that passes and that goes, because it will, and we go on. But it's also an interesting. I'm not trying to make this a Native American flavor to it, but
no,
just
that's
the
good.
input. Yeah, the input I want to put in is that once upon a time, when women lost their men, they would cut their finger off and grieve outwardly, or they would cut their hair. And I shaved my head when I was a caretaker for my father and my mother, and I see for 6 months, and then they passed. I just cut all down to the skull, cut it all off. It's finally coming back after 7 years.
Yeah.
Those are outward ways, scars. People cut themselves, and you see in that movie Dances with Wolves, where Kevin Costner stands with the fist, grieving out there for the loss of her husband,
right.
And she's cutting herself.
Yes.
And it's people do their own thing. We don't do that anymore, of course, but a lot of us will cut our hair. I met somebody at the pharmacy, local CVS here in Warwick, the village, and this young woman we just happened upon a conversation, and she said, yeah, I just lost my boyfriend not too long ago, but I carry him with me. And what she did was she took a strand of his hair and braided it into her hair, which I thought was really cool. It's like, wow,
that's very cool.
That's something different, and but yeah, that's kind of the premise, that we all have to grieve in our own way. And
yes. I was hoping that Sam would come on this morning. I didn't talk to him about this show last night, but I tagged him in it. We've talked every day, and he's had a rough time with this. As this was, he put up a post earlier in the week that said, Dave has been Uncle Dave to me since I started walking. And and he's 22 years old, and he's known Dave the whole time. And Dave was always to him the pirate and all of this stuff, and which was the fun side of it. And Dave was a lot more to Sam than that. And Sam was really broken up about this. And Sam is not just like me in physical features. Sam is like me in emotional features and his makeup, his personality. And I understood him immensely from the beginning. And he told me, I wanted him to be able to share this, but I'm going to share this with you. He told me about a dream he had of Uncle Dave the other night. Now, I'll preface that by saying I am a firm believer that we can have contacts made with us through dreams. And for me, the way I could always tell was whether I'm observing an event with somebody in it or whether somebody's speaking to me, sharing information with me. And I've had my contact dreams I've talked about on the show, my aunt calling me on the phone in a dream, so on. But hang on a second. I'm going to tell you this, John. He's messaging me. He's having some YouTube problems. If you wanted to call in to the show and come on live with Reuben and I, you go to this link. I'm pasting that in your window right there. I know you can't get into the YouTube to watch, but if you wanted to come on the show, you could come to that link. Totally up to you, brother. Dave's brother, John.
And for John and for Scotty, just want to say real quick, when he comes on board, I'd like to do something in the form of a song.
Yes,
Dave, and sing a song in that way.
Absolutely.
I'll explain the song, what it means, and just an honorarium, a memorial type of thing.
Absolutely. I want you to do that.
Yeah.
We'll see if John pops in here or not.
Yeah.
But this story of Sam's dream, let me finish that very quickly. He had a dream and he saw Dave standing at the end of a dock. And, you've seen photos like that where the dock runs way out into the water.
Like a pier. Yeah.
Yep. And he called it a dock. So it must have been a small version, And Dave was standing out there with his back to Sam. He was looking at right in front of him in the water was a big pirate ship, a big lumbering, tall sails galleon. And so Dave was just standing out there at the end of the dock looking at it. And Sam walked out to the end of the dock and stood next to Dave. And Dave, I can see his face doing it. He wasn't looking at Sam. He's looking up at the ship, and Sam's looking at the side of his face. Dave looks up and kind of smiles, and he says, he's looking up at the ship, and he says, yep. He says, fair weather's blowing for a blessed voyage. And then Sam woke up. And it was that fast. He said it felt like 2 seconds.
Wow.
And he was crying, telling me about this dream. Fair weather's blowing for a blessed voyage. And that was after David passed. And my daughter Rowan, my 11-year-old, had a dream probably on the same night. And this was Tuesday night probably. And she said, Uncle Dave, she was sitting on the sofa in our living room, and Uncle Dave walked into the room, and he had his cane in his hand. And he came and sat down next to her and gave her a hug, and he said, I love you, Rowan. And she said, I woke up. Those to me are contacts, without question. Science can't prove that, but we know it spiritually. So he has communicated with people. I didn't think for an instant that I felt bereft by not having a contact like that. Why didn't I get a dream like that? Well, I didn't need one. Dave, that doesn't mean, Dave, if you're listening, that doesn't mean you can't make contact. I'm okay with that. I want that. I crave it. But I didn't need it like my kids needed it. And he loved my kids. And so he was pretty busy, I think, making rounds afterwards. Not that there's time. That's a flippant way of talking about it, maybe
No, I
tongue in
agree.
cheek, but
Dreams are dream ecology, if you want to call it. Dreams are very, very, very important for American Indian, Native American people, simply because it's that spiritual connection to, like I said, the nirvana, beyond, happy, hunting ground, heaven, whatever we want, that we can't explain scientifically. And at the end of my lectures, I tended to talk about have next to your nightstand just a tablet, paper, and pen, and everybody has reoccurring dreams. We have sexual dreams, we have nightmares, we have daydreams, we have all these dreams. And so to write it out, and it may date it, and then it's going to come back, and you get this whole caliber of dreams that you've had, a dream journal, so to speak. I advise my audience to do that, because you may get a dream where there is a knock on the door, and you open the door, and there's a big fish standing there, and it grabs your hand and kisses it, and you wake up, and you're like, that's a weird dream. Big fish came to the knock on the Well, dreams are symbolic. You have to read it in a symbolic way, through symbols. And so the knocking of the door, opening the door is a symbol, a sign, another symbol. The fish is a symbol. The kissing of the hand is a symbol. But it's what you're going to interpret it at. And nobody can hack your dreams except you. Now, so there's that in learning to understand our dreams, and why did I have this? What happened? What's going on? Yada yada yada. You write it out, and you may have it again later, a year or two later. So it's powerful. We don't listen to our dreams. We tend to just think, oh, I had too much beer and pizza last night, and then we dismiss it. And a lot of us we can't recall our dreams by noon.
Right.
Yeah.
I have heard it said, and maybe this isn't the pen answer to the whole thing, but I was told that the dreams that you remember that stay with you sharp and strong are usually dreams of messages or dreams of contacts and things like that. And so that's one good way to gauge it. Sarah Yusuf says dreams can be considered therapy for the unconscious. Some have theorized. So Anita Palmer says, is there also a tale that all animals will judge your entrance into heaven? I've been told it's a Native American belief.
I would run with that. I've never heard anything like that, but I wouldn't discount it, simply because as we're speaking of dreams, a physical manifestation of that I think of right away is if you go to the northwest to Seattle, Oregon, those areas, or even Alaska, you'll find totem poles.
Yes.
Different animals on it. And they're all, and there's, like Scotty, there are tribes here that have clans, a clan system, where for us, it's if you're from the Raven clan, you can't marry anybody else in the Raven clan. You've got to marry somebody from the Wolf clan or the Whale clan or some other clan. And it's just to keep things from being incestual in that way. But it's also, I wouldn't doubt it, that the totems that we dream of, or the spirit animals that guide us, will reflect or come through in that way. So I see that.
By the way, everybody, I caught that, Reuben. I'm moving very fast over.
No, that's fine.
Here's John Potter. This is Uncle Dave's brother. How you doing, John?
I guess I'm doing okay. I had to go put my teeth in.
Oh, understandable. So, John, it's good to see you. We just spoke last night, and we've spoken off and on through the week. and it's I know it's been a tough go for you and for everybody else. And on top of just losing your brother, you have a second brother. You have all the business stuff you have to do too now. That's going to pile onto you, and so it's Dana and I are here to help, as you know, and we'll help in any way we can. And you've got your parents to take care of now. So
yeah, I can't tell you how much we have appreciated the outpouring of love. It's been a great comfort.
Good.
I'm
glad.
My folks were totally amazed and mystified at how you could put a 3-hour program on.
Yeah,
it was quite magical to them.
it's the people who come in and talk about it and share things. And say Reuben wants to. This is my friend Reuben FastHorse. He's been
Reuben.
Dave and I were good friends at Reuben. We met him at the same time while doing the regiment, the reenacting, and about 20 plus years ago, and so closer to 25 probably now. But Reuben wanted to play a little song for you.
For you, for Chie John, and I call you Chie because you're my older brother, as a kinship respect in that way. Makes him, and Dave was my Chie as well. So what I'd like to do is play a song for him, and it's in my language in Lakota, and it says, Oyateki washte walakye le mielo. My people, the good that you see is me. Not me singing the song, but about Dave. Doha ochanku awamanicha washte eblukjaelo. When I walk on this road of life, I try to think and be positive. Oyateki washte walakye le mielo. My people, the good that you see is me. Oyateke washte walake le mielo yo are yo hidaya doha ochanko yo awamane chaya washte eblu chayelo yo anaya hidaya oyateke washte walake le mielo yo yo oyateke washte walake le mielo yo anaya hidaya doha ochanko yo awamane chaya washte ebluk chayelo yo adaya hedaya oyateke washte walake le mielo yo for Dave.
Thank you, Reuben.
Reuben, thank you so much. I don't know what it is. Dave and I, unbeknownst to one another, have always had a real fondness for the Native American instruments. It means a great deal to me that you did that.
That's from the heart. Thank you, Reuben. And,
You know, it's interesting as you get older and you begin to have real conversations with your siblings, the things you find out about each other that you never knew, you know. I had never, until Dave and I had a conversation about 10 years ago, I made a comment that I had always felt really connected, even though I've always lived in the city, to the land in America. I said, I think much in the way that the American Indians did. And I understand more of their struggle because of the way I feel. Also, we both had an affinity for the beauty of Asian women, but did not know that.
That was so Dave. I did not know that.
But there's a transition. Biblically, they would say when you were a child, you thought as a child, and when you're a man, you put your childish things away and you think like a man, or something like that. I'm not real good at direct quotes, but we found each other to be rather interesting people once we had grown up. And Dave, I think, was more interesting than me.
In a different way.
Yeah.
And that was Dave. I was talking to Dana the other day, yesterday probably, about Dave's stuff and how we're trying to gather and help John get all of Dave's stuff together. And he had it in different places. It was his stuff for mural painting, his stuff for his oil painting, his stuff for scenic work, his stuff for costuming, his stuff for festival, his stuff for sword fighting community, all his different things, and all the people that would love to have a little piece of Dave to take. And I know Dana's working on that. She had a pretty good idea of where he wanted things to go, but he has so many things because David wasn't a world traveler. David was a local traveler, and he'd been so many places for his work, for his project work. Let's put it this way. Dave didn't work for a company. Dave was his own company with Dana, and they did a lot of stuff together, and he did a lot of traveling. And for that, movies and scenic work and murals he did with me, and festivals and the regiment and weapons and all the theater, all that stuff. And in the course of doing all of that, he left behind a trail of, you hear a person will posthumously praise somebody who's passed on. Oh, Bob was such a wonderful man. Or, he was always treated his dog nice. Or, we saw him as a neighbor. You hear all these platitudes that are put out posthumously. But with Dave, you've got hundreds of people who were touched by him. And they all say pretty much the same thing. I have never known a kinder, more open-hearted person, loving person than Uncle Dave. And even people on this show that have never met him other than on this show would say that about him. And that says an awful lot about Dave, that he's leaving behind a legacy of not only being a pirate and a captain and a this and a that and an artist and a tailor. That's the other part of Dave, his tailoring. his chef. He's a chef. All this stuff left behind. What's left behind most that people talk about is the kind of heart he had. And this was genuine. Was Dave perfect? Unlike any of us? No. Dave was not a perfect man, but Dave was a good man. And he would be the one, Reuben, who would come to that fork in the Milky Way, and the old woman would ask, "Did you live a good life?" He could answer and say, "Well, I did my best and I worked at it," and she'd know he wasn't lying. Well, then you take this path.
You know, whatever David picked up an interest in, he was not satisfied to just muddle around with it.
Right.
In his film, he had to know costuming. He had to know makeup. He had to know everything well enough to run each department.
Yes.
He said, in order to direct, because you can't give people directions if you can't do it yourself. You don't know how much you can get out of them. He told me about a person. He said, "I want this costume to be like this." And they said, "Well, you can't do that." And he sat down and ripped one off.
And he made it work. Yeah, you can.
How did you do that? And so he gave him a couple of lessons, but he said so many directors would only be interested in the management of the film, and they knew nothing about props. They knew nothing about other areas, and they didn't like to watch movies that were made before they were born. Dave studied film.
He did.
And cooking, same thing. Name any topic he was into, he gorged on it.
By the way, Dave also knew very well how to age costumes for movies. I always hated watching historical movies where they're all in these pristine, freshly pressed, and costumes from the 17th century. And it said that they wouldn't have looked that way. It would have looked worn out or worn. And there was one little trick he taught me, 30 years ago when I first knew him. I was doing costuming for a church play, and we had a big theater department in this church. And so we put on magnificent musicals and plays, and they were very well done. I got to work on sets and costumes, and I said to Dave, "I've got all these guys that are supposed to be prisoners in an Egyptian prison, ancient, 3,000 years ago. What do I do with these costumes to age them?" I had these kind of burlappy looking shifts with burlappy ripped off and made belts out of them and headdresses. And he says, "Oh, I got the perfect idea." He says, "All you got to do," he says, "just wet down your lawn and throw these costumes all on the lawn and take your truck and drive over them 20 times. And he says, then hang them out to dry and shake the loose mud off of it, and you got it." And so I did that. And what was funny was when we actually did the play, I played one of the very bit parts in that because I was in on doing the props and the sets and all of that. But I played one of these prisoners, and one of the other prisoners had to pat me on the back at one point. And he patted me on the back, and in the lights, you saw this dirty dust from having driven over it 20 times in the mud puddle. So Dave, he always had, that's just a little thing. I just remembered that. But his advice was, just throw it in the mud and drive over it. And it'll wear it out real quick, he said. So there you go. You can all take that. And so the next costume,
I'm afraid I'm to fault for Dave's interest in theater, or at least partly, because when I was in high school, I worked on every play. And I think that's where his interest in theater came from.
Yes.
I stopped in when he was working on a play in the same theater, And I was I'm 10 years older than him, so I was just dropping in to see how the show was going.
Yeah,
They
I'm
said,
glad you did.
pardon me?
I'm glad you did.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay, it could just be your volume, and then when you turn it up, it picks up, and we get feedback. So,
Okay, well, I'm all the way up, but
all right.
Anyway, they couldn't get the sight curtain to not have wrinkles in it, and I said, "Oh, go get let's see, it would have been 4 C clamps and 4 pieces of wood, and about I said 20 feet of rope, and clamp about 2/3 of the way up, tie the rope onto the C clamps, and pull it tight to the sides of the theater." And he, how'd you know that? And I said, had the same problem 10 years ago.
It's how to get wrinkles out of big curtains without ironing them.
Yeah, I'm sure he takes credit for it all too.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So I still have I have some stuff of Dave's that he gave me a while back, and it was kind of like, they're on loan as long as you need them. But I've got, as I've said, in this studio, I'm going to be putting these up, and he gave me a bunch of these to hang in the rafters here.
Oh yeah.
So I've got all these, and they've got the barn doors are separate parts laying over there, and so we're gonna hang these up on there. We'll call this affectionately the Dave Potter Studio once we get those up.
Oh, well, that's
There
lovely.
you go. There you go.
Dave and I had trouble discussing lighting for a long time until he came to a seminar with me that I was going to. I was a still photographer, and he'd go, well, we would do this and we would do that, and I said, well, we do this and we do that. And after the seminar, he goes, oh, the equipment's all the same, we just call it different stuff. So
Nice.
we were 2 professions separated by a common
Yes.
set of equipment.
Now, by the way, I showed these on this show at some point. We did a little tribute. There was a book I wrote called The Rollicking Adventures of Tam O'Hare, which came out 2008. And it was fully illustrated. It was about, it took place in the 1500s, the reigns of Mary, Queen of Scots, and Elizabeth I. And Tam O'Hare was an Irish lord. And I told the story all with animals.
Mhm.
And all the costumes, the ships, the swords, the personages were accurate historically, but they were done as animals. And so the next season, or that season, at the festival, I was asked to come and do a little stage show. I had retired out of festival the year before. Can you come out and do a show on stage, reading from the book at the children's stage? So we did that. And we read the scene of the big sword fight scene between Tam O'Hare and Martin Frobisher, the British sea captain. And so Dave shows up at my house one day with these. He was going to do the part of Frobisher, and another friend of ours, Wayne Grimmer, was going to do the part of Tam O'Hare on the stage and do the sword fight. And so Dave had made these leather masks. And I painted the features on, but he made them all out of leather. And so this one would tie on this way. This was Tam, and he had a hat on, so that was down. And Tam's big ears is the rabbit. And so this was Tam, and you can even see, as you look closely on the backside, you can see Dave's own drawings of the mask, so he could mold the leather. So that was Tam, and this one was Frobisher, the ferret who was the British sea captain.
That's wonderful.
He's just tied on. That was his earring, by the way, the earring of the British sea captain. So I have to not get the whiskers in my mouth. which are broom bristles, I think. So Dave made these up, and it was Roger Rabbit over in the chat room who mentioned them, and I just happened to have them sitting right here. So I wanted to show those off again. So Dave made these for me, and just showed up. If you were to hire an artisan to make these for you, you'd be paying $500-$600 a piece for handcrafted masks.
Yeah.
And without the painting. And so he just showed up one day and go, "Oh, I made these great masks for this little thing we're doing." It's the way he did. So, and what he was all about. And so he's also a leather worker. so there you go.
I was going to prevail on him to teach me a little rudimentary leather crafting.
Yes.
This summer, but I'll have to hack through it myself.
Yeah. I want to do some leather crafting. I want to get into, he made boots and stuff and doublets, and he did all this kind of fine, as you can see with
I
these
just
masks.
wanted to make a sheath for my hatchets.
Oh, that's all you want to do is a sheath. He did all this. All this is three-dimensional, folks. This is all carved out of the, not carved, he would soak the leather and then tool in the features in 3 dimensions. And so that's the leather working that he did. So.
I've never been able to figure out how he picked up all these skills, but he seemed to think he was born with a lot of them.
He was. And that's the thing, is Dave was the kind of creative that had that ability to go, leather mask? No, I've never made one, but I will. And he just figures it out. And that's what creatives do. So, yeah, Morgan Snow, you're right. And when we speak of sadness, like I mentioned, and I know you know this, Morgan, you've gone through your own losses. We don't grieve for the other person. We grieve for the loss of that person. It's us we're grieving for. And Dave, I think, is just fine now. We just miss him. And all those past life skills he was carrying with throughout his many journeys on this planet. I remember Dave talking with somebody about tailoring, doing costumes, period costumes for Renaissance era. And he said, "No, that's not how we did it." He says, "We did it this way." And he caught himself in his thinking saying, he said, "We, not they." And he firmly believes he was a tailor in that era in past life. So, Rainey, is that you? Hello? I think my wife was going to come in at some point. I heard somebody come down the stairs. Not sure if it was her.
Have her bring some more coffee.
Yeah, really. My coffee's cold. So, Rainey, is that you?
Okay, there are people who would think that was really sexist. I'm just
to say hi
upstairs.
She might. I can't understand her. Something's going on up there. So, oh, hey. I just wondered if you felt fit to come in and say hello. This is Dave's brother, John.
Hey.
There's Rainey.
Hey, Rainey.
Hi.
So, and for everybody else who knows her, there she is.
Here I am.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
We'll be just a little bit and we'll be done.
Okay.
All right.
I'm up cooking for kids.
She's cooking for kids.
Only because he would babysit, and when Scotty babysits, Rainey does everything.
Shut up now. You're done.
All right.
I love you.
Bye. I'll take a hot dog, Grady.
Right? All right.
Yes. Two.
I'm mailing it.
2, please. And yeah, she's mailing it. Watch, you'll get something in the mail. But yeah, we have a friend of ours who, Heather, who I've done some of the, does the concert rigging, lights and sound and all of that stuff for the big concerts coming out. And I've worked with her a couple of times. And she needed somebody to watch one of her sons yesterday. And so I said, yeah, bring him over. And so I spent all day with him yesterday, and he's 9, little autistic, a little Tourette's, a little bit of Tourette's going on. Not overboard, but I think it manifests in the fact, she says, so how did he do today? She dropped him the night before late, and then she got here about 11 o'clock last night to pick him up. And she said, how'd he do for you? And I said, he talked all day. So, and literally, not a moment he was not talking. And that's how his Tourette's manifests in different things. So, he's a pretty wild kid. And so she got here, and she was so tired. They ended up sleeping here. I said, you can take the bed downstairs. And they didn't. She slept on the sofa, and her little boy. So they're up there too. So Rainey's up cooking food for everybody right now. So I said, technically, I did my job. We're out of the babysitting mode, and we're in the friends spending the night mode. So you can take over. So there you go. But
it's really nice to hear the background. Of course, I know Scotty from back in the day, but also Dave, in the sense of being able to dance in two worlds, in the sense of doing the Ren Fair and then doing the Highland Brigade. 42nd,
Mhm.
Is that right? 42nd Highland? Yeah.
42nd Highlanders.
Yeah, Highlanders. So different outfits. And I got my start when I lived in Milwaukee. I'm going to say around 93, 92. And I did children's theater for a touring company. And the theme was Indians, was Dances with Wolves came out, Last of the Mohicans came, all these Indian movies. And so they put on a play that we had all the schools, public and high school, elementary and high school, all throughout the city in Milwaukee. So it was really, really neat. And my leading lady was a Native American, but she portrayed one. She was a Japanese American girl, as tall as me. I'm 5'9", and her father was from Texas, and her mother was from Tokyo. Very pretty girl, very nice, and great to work with. So there were just four of us, and but it was an introduction into the whole world of theater, drama, everything that you think of, outfits, lighting. It's amazing how that stuff is an education unto itself. Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to start wrapping this show up because we've got guests upstairs. Oh, Matthew Sainsbury is still here. I didn't see you there, Matthew. I think he wanted to say something to you, John. This is Matthew from Barbados.
Yeah.
Matthew, welcome
Hi,
back.
John. Yeah. Hi. Morning to you.
Hi.
Yeah. My deepest condolences to you for what you're going through. I know how loss is like.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
for all the people who popped on with comments, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. Dave was a very fantastic artist. He was very skilled with his hands at making paintings, artwork, all those type of things. I saw many times on his show. When Scotty bring on the show, you will see, some of his artwork. He was doing it, painting mountains and valleys and trees and things like that. Very good.
Yes, he was. Well, Matthew, thanks. I'm going to start wrapping things up. So I'm glad I saw you before I did.
Thanks.
And
No
thanks for
problem.
coming back on, brother.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye,
man.
Ruben.
All right.
Thank you.
And
All right, Scotty, I'm going to bow out. Thank you so much for
all right,
this.
Reuben.
Chia, John, much love and
Good to meet you.
likewise, and your family as well. So it's
Reuben,
great.
are you on Facebook?
I am, just as the name says right there. You'll see it.
I'll send you a friend.
And if you don't have to quite yet, Reuben, we've got Sarah Yusuf just popped in.
Oh, yes.
If you've
Hey,
got
Sarah.
a minute or two. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm hanging in there.
Good.
I mean, it kind of was numb for a
Oh,
while, and
hi,
it just
John.
hit me like on
Hi, John.
Thursday. It took me, and I spent most of yesterday thinking about, today, what I'm going to say and all that stuff. And just, listening to everybody, it just went right out of my head, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you,
But-
Sarah, for talking with me that night. You don't know this, Scotty, but I tried to reach you.
She told me.
Yeah, after your phone call, and then I reached out to her, or I think she reached out to me. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. But
There's one key thing to remember. If you're trying to reach me at 2:35 in the morning, sometimes I don't hear that phone. So
No, that's fine. And thank you, Sarah, for I'm kind of a night owl anyway. So
yeah,
Sarah was really comforting
too.
for me. It hit me hard. I was just wow. I didn't think I was gonna feel like that, but like everybody grieves their own way, and it was good to have a sounding board, so to speak, Sarah, for that. So I thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. Well, I mean, I just wanted to
Let go.
say that, we all love and miss Uncle Dave since he's sort of passed from the physical plane. But, the suddenness of it that really was jarring for me because over the past, 5-6 years, I mean, I've had, a lot of deaths, whether in family or patients or, whatnot, or a lot of people in my life just, died for whatever reason. And, you reach a point where you kind of get desensitized to it. And Uncle Dave's death, suddenness of Uncle Dave's death, it really was jarring to me. It's like, it kind of like woke up and reminded me that I needed to mourn, in some ways.
Yes.
I talked to him like maybe like a week or 2 weeks before, this happened. And, he was like, business as usual. We would have, interesting conversations, like different topics. Like one day we discussed how mental health affected Van Gogh's paintings and the progression of that. And, you just go back and forth about, the most random things. And he was really there for me when I was going through some stuff. And, I would start talking about me, and then he'd go on a 25-minute rant about how something similar to him happened. And, he was always he always brought it around as a way to guide.
Dave was a storyteller among many other
lessons.
things, so it was very
he had his own version of parables.
right.
And we would joke, said it's like, oh, by the time I finally meet you, I mean, I'll have to make sure I wear a pink shirt with a S taped on it, so it's me.
Yes.
But,
the big pink circle with an S.
It's like, now that's never gonna happen.
Right.
But I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's hard, and I know you guys said you were planning to have a memorial or something. I think in about
going to be a couple of them up here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna see if I can get off work and come, because I really for me
that would be wonderful. We've got a small one that's being done with the family. That's more at their church. It's for his parents and his family down in Rochester. Then we'll have a much bigger one that's being planned. We're having the planning of it on the 10th. I'm meeting with folks, and we're
just keep me posted.
The big one dates. For the whole community type of thing. So
with the dates and
Carl,
everything.
I see you out there.
But
how you doing?
I just want to just finish speaking and remind everyone that at the end of every show, the last thing Uncle Dave always said was be well and do some good for somebody. And so for someone like me, who's like, and a lot of people who are far away and who feel like they are helpless, they just really need to take those words to heart and put it into action.
Yes.
So that, and that's what, I'm going to do and what we all should do, and because those are his words. And, keep him in mind when we do those sorts of things, even though we should be doing it always, but, it's just a big reminder, but.
Yeah.
Sarah, I don't mean to interrupt, but Sarah, I would like to share something that we use when we do ceremony, Sundance, Inipi, Uipi, Loampi, whatever we're doing before we go into a ceremony. And when we leave the ceremony, my uncle said, this is a prayer unto itself. You've heard it from the Hindus, namaste. The God in me recognizes the God in you. We have something in Lakota that's the same. We say, Mitakuye Oyasi. Mitakuyasi. We are all related. We are for all my relatives in that sense. So we're all related, not just human species, but the plant nation, the winged, the four-legged, the swimming, the slithering, the crawling. All these are Mitakuye Oyasi. We are all related. And so Dave is part of that circle with everybody, I believe. So that's a word you can use. Mitakuye Oyasi, a prayer unto itself. Just want to share.
There it is. Well, thank you for all of that, Sarah. That means a lot.
Yeah.
And
but I mean, and it's, in times like these, we just have to pull together as a community and be there for each other.
Right.
So, and that's what, so you're going to have to
hear
put
it
up
in
with
your
the
voice,
calls,
so.
with the calls and the thing. And I mean, it's,
yeah,
everybody's, kind of doing that in their own way. We just have to
Yeah.
be there for each other, no matter what's going on. So,
Yeah.
but thank you guys. I'm gonna pop out.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for coming
Sarah.
in. We'll see you later. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Carl, how you doing?
Hey, Scotty, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Fantastic. Hey, I'm an old fraternity brother of Dave's from back at SDSU back in the early 80s. And just wanted to reach out and let you guys know that we're thinking of you, his current brotherhood and all those people that have been surrounding him, these last, 35, 37 years, however long it's been. That's the last time I had ever talked to him. We connected on Facebook and we chat once in a while, and it's I just wanted to kind of reach out and let you guys know.
Oh, Carl, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
Several of the brothers, we have a Facebook site, and we kind of share when these kind of things happen, and members pass on, and several people have passed on their prayers and good wishes and positive energy for the family, and it was really tough.
Well, I appreciate your coming on and saying that. I'm glad you took the effort and the time to come on the show and
Sure.
say that. Dave is definitely he's left a big wake behind him, and I know there's going to be two different memorial services. We've mentioned that. One is going to be down in Rochester for his parents and his family down there, and anybody who wants to come down for that. And the other is going to be sponsored by, I think, primarily Braden Lodge, but other lodges all joining in to do a big celebration of Dave's life coming up a few weeks later. So that's for everybody. Are you in the Twin Cities area still, Carl?
No, I'm from northeastern South Dakota, Aberdeen, if you know where that is.
Okay.
Sure.
Like the
it was interesting on the way I was riding to church with my family, and my daughter is at Fort Yates at Sitting Bull College studying Native American language and studies. And so, Reuben, when you were doing your honor song, I clicked it over to the Bluetooth so my wife and daughter could listen, and she said, "FastHorse, that's a cannonball name." And so she was pretty. It was pretty cool.
Believe it or not, there's Standing Rock is interesting in the sense that it has the three people. The Dakota in Minnesota are probably older. And then there's Lakota, because we went west.
Yep.
And then there's Nakota in Canada. And so Standing Rock houses all three. And she's right. Cannonball is more of a Dakota province of Dakota where they live, and their name is FastHorse. But they get it from the Lakota side, which is in Rock Creek or Bullhead, South Dakota, where my parents are born and raised and died and buried. And that name is FastHorse. And so a man in my ancestry married a Dakota woman in Cannonball, and the name took off then. So it's kind of like Smith and Jones.
Fast Horse is the Smith and Jones of the Lakota nation.
Lakota world. Yes.
I like that.
So that's good.
Very good. Very
Carl,
good.
thank you. I
Thank you,
really
Carl, so
appreciate you coming on and saying something. This is an informal thing. It's the informal Sunday show we do. I've got a show all week long, and then we do this as informal. And so everybody can come on and talk. And so there's not a broad reach for this show, but it's amongst people who knew Uncle Dave. We called him Uncle Dave here because he was always Uncle Dave to my kids for the last 30 years. And so we just I said, my friend a few years ago, my friend Uncle Dave is joining us. We'll just call him Uncle Dave. So everybody knew him as Uncle Dave.
He had a very avuncular personality, I would say.
Yes, he did. That's a great way to put it.
Very much.
So,
let me just share one more thing.
Yes,
You were
please.
talking about, and John was talking about how, he would attack, whether it was cooking or whatever, and I remember being in the fraternity house and we wanted to host some big event and cook something. And, we were all college kids. None of us knew how to cook. Dave says, well, if you can get me a stock pot and a this and a that. And we had a guy that worked at food service. So he appropriated a big 15-gallon stock pot. And Dave went to work in the kitchen and he cooked up this phenomenal meal for, I think the parents were coming in for homecoming or something. And you might just as likely see him the next day with a sewing machine, ripping out a costume for something. And we decided we were going to do a beach party in our fraternity house one time, and I'll leave you with this one. And so we got 3 truckloads of sand, 45 yards of sand, and we wheelbarrowed it into the back room of our fraternity house, and had the bar all set up. And Dave said they need something to complete it, and he painted this beach scene mural on one wall. It was just phenomenal.
Wow.
And when I posted his passing on our Facebook page, right beneath it was the last post he had made, which was probably a year and a half ago, about, hey, does anybody have any pictures of that mural I did in the fraternity house? And we were all going to go look and get them to him, and of course, it never happened. So I felt kind of bad about that, but I feel like I should go dig that out,
send
and
that
post
to
it.
me. If you can find that, send that to me.
I would do that.
And Carl, it's interesting that you say that. Thank you for sharing those stories. It's just so I see it in this light of death and life. It's not, it's living the life we live, of course, but it's also the things we leave behind. I've got a CD of music, a flute music I made, Dave's mural, Scotty's swords, whatever it is that gets passed on. That's a part of you. That's being immortal. I see it as. So Dave's still alive through his paintings and his clothing and his cooking and
everything,
and through us, our stories. So thank you, Carl.
That's it. All right. And as I say, we don't grieve for Dave. We grieve for the hole he's left in our lives. So we grieve for ourselves. So Dave's in a better place. As he said to my son in a dream, Carl, you may have missed this. I believe in dream contacts, amongst other things. My son had a dream the other night, and Dave is standing at the end of a dock looking up at a big ship, tall sails, and Sam came up next to him, and Dave said he's looking at the ship, and he says, fair weather for a blessed voyage. And so that's Dave right there. So he's already on the blessed voyage. So
all right,
Carl, thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you.
All right,
I'm gonna
have a good day.
Carl, put this on. I'm gonna tune out here with just a song for Dave and to close in that sense.
Oh, all right. Beautiful, Reuben.
You bet.
Beautiful.
For Dave.
For Dave.
And for everybody, live long and prosper.
There it is. And everybody, that's the best way to sign off right now. I just want to say to you all, and for Dave, everyone, live long and prosper.